The rain came without warning. The afternoon sky over Yankee Stadium was clear. Fans packed into the stands, watching the babe do what he did best. Then the heavens opened. Not a gentle shower, a deluge. Water poured down like someone had ripped open the sky. Within seconds, the field was flooding. The bases disappeared under puddles. That's when the panic started. It began in right field, the cheap seats, the bleachers where working families sat, the section called Ruthville, because fans came to watch the babe launch balls into their territory. Wooden benches, no roof, completely exposed. When the rain hit, those fans stood up. All of them, at once. Thousands pushing toward narrow exits, thunder cracking, children crying, mothers screaming, everyone shoving. The exits couldn't handle it. Not thousands trying to escape at once. The crowd became a living thing, surging, crushing, unstoppable. People fell. The young, the old, the small. They went down. Others stepped over them, not from cruelty, from blind panic. More fell. The screaming grew louder. When security got control, when the rain slowed, they found bodies. An elderly man, trampled, a college student, crushed, and dozens of injured people, mostly children, lying on concrete, some unconscious, some crying. Ambulances arrived, sirens cutting through rain. The count kept rising. 15, 20, 30. By the time the last ambulance left, 62 people had been hospitalized. 62, most of them children. The game was canceled. Players retreated to the locker room, stunned. Nobody knew what to say. Babe Ruth sat in his mud-stained uniform, staring at nothing. His teammates gave him space. They knew that look. One of the injured kids had been wearing a Ruth jersey. Someone mentioned it. Ruth's jaw tightened. He stood without a word, walked to his locker, changed. His manager asked where he was going. Ruth didn't answer. He just left. Outside, reporters swarmed. Ruth pushed past them. No comment. He had somewhere to be. Lincoln Hospital sat in the Bronx, a 20-minute drive from Yankee Stadium. Most of the injured children had been taken there, the ones whose families couldn't afford the fancy private hospitals, the working-class kids who'd saved their pennies to sit in Ruthville, who'd come to the game to see their hero, who'd ended up broken and bleeding because they'd tried to escape the rain. Ruth arrived at Lincoln Hospital just as the sun was setting. He parked his car, grabbed something from the back seat, and walked through the front entrance. A nurse at the reception desk looked up, did a double-take, dropped her pen. "Mr. Ruth? Where are the kids from the stadium?" The nurse stammered, pointed down a hallway. Ruth nodded, started walking. The nurse called after him. "Sir, visiting hours are almost over. You can't just—" Ruth kept walking. He found the children's ward on the second floor, a long room with rows of beds, maybe 30 kids, some sleeping, some awake, all bandaged, bruised, broken. Parents sat beside beds, holding small hands, whispering comfort. Nurses moved between beds, checking vitals, adjusting blankets. When Babe Ruth walked into that room, carrying a wicker basket, every head turned. One of the kids, a boy maybe 10 years old with a cast on his arm, saw him first. His eyes went wide. His mouth opened. He tried to speak, but nothing came out. He just pointed. Other kids followed his gaze, a girl with stitches on her forehead, a younger boy with his leg elevated. One by one, they recognized him. The babe, here, in their hospital room. A nurse approached Ruth, professionally stern. "Sir, this area is restricted. Family only." Ruth looked at her. His eyes were red. Not from crying, from something else. Exhaustion, guilt. He spoke quietly. "These kids got hurt at my stadium, watching me. That makes them my responsibility." The nurse opened her mouth to argue, but something in his face stopped her. She stepped aside. Ruth walked to the first bed. A little girl, maybe 7, both arms in slings. Her mother sat beside her, gripping her hand. The mother saw Ruth approaching and froze, unsure what was happening. Ruth knelt down beside the bed so he was eye level with the girl. "Hey there, sweetheart. What's your name?" The girl whispered it, so quiet he barely heard. "That's a beautiful name," Ruth said. He reached into his basket, pulled out a baseball, brand new, white leather gleaming. He had a pen in his pocket. He signed the ball right there, big looping signature across the sweet spot. "This is for you, for being brave." He placed the ball gently in her lap, where she could see it even with her arms immobilized. The girl stared at it like it was made of gold. Ruth moved to the next bed. Another child, another baseball, another signature. "You're gonna be okay, kid, I promise." Bed after bed, he went. Slow, patient. He didn't rush. He knelt beside every single child, learned every name, signed every baseball, said something kind. Man, some of the kids were too hurt to talk. Ruth talked anyway, telling them about plays from the game, funny stories about his teammates, anything to make them smile. One boy, maybe 12, had a bandage covering half his face. He'd taken a hard fall during the stampede, broken his jaw. He couldn't speak, could barely move. Ruth sat on the edge of his bed, carefully, so as not to jostle him. "Tough break, kid," Ruth said softly. "You know, I broke my jaw once. Spring training, took a fastball to the face. Worst pain of my life. But you know what I learned? Pain means you're still here, still fighting. And fighters like us, we always come back stronger." The boy's eyes filled with tears. Ruth pretended not to notice, just signed a baseball and placed it on the nightstand where the boy could see it. By the time Ruth reached the last bed, his basket was almost empty. The room had gone completely silent except for occasional sniffles. Parents watched, some crying. Nurses stood along the walls, tissues pressed to their eyes. The last child was the youngest, maybe 5 years old. Tiny thing, barely visible under the white hospital sheets, a bandage around his head, IV in his small arm. His mother sat beside him, looking absolutely destroyed. This was her baby, her little boy who'd just wanted to see a baseball game. Ruth sat down beside her. "Ma'am, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry this happened." The mother looked at him, confused. "Mr. Ruth, this wasn't your fault. They came to see me play. They got hurt. That makes it my fault." The mother shook her head. "They came because you make them happy. You make everyone happy." Ruth didn't respond to that. He just pulled out his last baseball, signed it, and gently placed it in the little boy's hand, folding the small fingers around it. "You hold on to this, kid. When you get better, you bring this ball back to the stadium and I'll hit you a home run. Deal?" The boy's eyes fluttered open. He looked at Ruth, managed the smallest nod. Ruth stood up, turned to face the room. 30-some kids, all watching him, parents, nurses, all waiting. He cleared his throat. "I want you all to know something. Every single one of you kids, you're tougher than any pitcher I ever faced. And when you get out of here, when you're all better, you come back to Yankee Stadium. Free tickets, best seats in the house, not the bleachers. Box seats, you and your families. That's a promise." One of the fathers stood up. "Mr. Ruth, you don't have to do that." "Yeah, I do." Ruth walked toward the door. Halfway there, he stopped, turned around. "One more thing. When I hit my next home run, it's for all of you, every single one of you." Then he left. No fanfare, no reporters, no photographs, just slipped out the same way he came in. The next day, the Yankees played again. Babe Ruth stepped up to the plate in the third inning. First pitch, fastball down the middle, he swung. The crack of the bat echoed through the stadium. The ball soared higher and higher, clearing the fence by 50 feet. Home run. Ruth rounded the bases slow, deliberate. As he crossed home plate, he didn't celebrate. He just looked toward the hospital somewhere out there in the Bronx and touched his cap. The newspapers wrote about the home run. Standard coverage. They didn't know about the hospital visit. Ruth had asked the staff not to tell anyone. He didn't want publicity, didn't want credit. He just wanted those kids to feel better. But one of the nurses told her friend. That friend told someone else. The story leaked. Not the whole story, just pieces. Babe Ruth visited the injured children. Ruth gave autographed baseballs. Small mentions in a few papers. The kids treasured those baseballs, held them while they healed. Some slept with them. Those signed balls became their most prized possessions, not because of the value, because of what they represented. The babe had come. The babe had cared. 1 week later, something happened at Lincoln Hospital that the staff would talk about for years. It was early afternoon. The children's ward had settled into its usual rhythm. Some kids were being discharged, going home with their families. Others were still healing, would be there for weeks. The nurses were doing their rounds when they heard noise from the hallway. Children's voices. Lots of them. A nurse went to investigate. What she saw made her laugh and cry at the same time. A group of children, maybe 20 of them, the ones well enough to walk, had gathered near the nurses' station. They were holding something. A wicker basket. The same kind of basket Ruth had brought. But this basket was full of baseballs, not new ones, used ones. Scuffed, grass-stained, well-worn baseballs, and every single ball was covered in signatures. Children's signatures. Messy handwriting, some barely legible, names scrawled across the leather. "We want to give this to Babe Ruth," one of the kids said, a girl with crutches. "To say thank you." The nurse's throat tightened. "How did you all—" "When did you—" "We've been signing them all week," another kid explained, a boy with his arm still in a sling. "Everyone who got a ball from Mr. Ruth, we signed one back. Some kids signed 2. We wanted him to have them." The nurse didn't know what to say. "I don't know if we can get these to him." "We already called the stadium," one of the parents said, stepping forward. "They said if we bring them, they'll make sure the babe gets them." So that's what they did. 20 injured children, some on crutches, some with parents carrying them, some bandaged and limping, made their way to Yankee Stadium. Took 3 cars. The journey hurt some of them. Didn't matter. They needed to do this. The stadium staff, when they saw this group of injured kids carrying a basket of baseballs, stopped everything, escorted them inside, found Babe Ruth in the locker room preparing for that night's game. Someone told him there were visitors. Ruth walked out, saw the children standing there, and his face did something complicated. Confusion, then recognition, then something that looked like he might break. The same little girl with the crutches stepped forward. "Mr. Ruth, you gave us baseballs when we were hurt. We wanted to give you baseballs back, to say thank you." She held out the basket. Ruth took it, looked inside, saw dozens of baseballs, each one covered in children's signatures, names he recognized from the hospital. Each ball represented a kid who'd been hurt, who'd suffered, who'd taken the time to sign something for him. He lifted one ball out, read the names, then another, then another. His hands were shaking. "These are—" he started, then stopped. Tried again. "You didn't have to—" "Yes, we did," one of the boys said. "You came to see us. Nobody else came. Just you." Ruth set the basket down carefully, like it contained something infinitely fragile. He looked at these kids, these brave kids who'd been through hell and came out the other side, and he did something almost no one ever saw Babe Ruth do. His eyes filled with tears. He wiped them quickly, tried to compose himself, failed. He knelt down, right there in the stadium corridor, so he was eye level with the shortest kid. "Thank you," he said. His voice cracked. "This is the best gift anyone ever gave me." One of the photographers from the stadium, who'd been hovering nearby, raised his camera. Ruth shot him a look. "No pictures." The photographer lowered his camera immediately. Ruth stood up, picked up the basket. "You kids feel good enough to watch a game?" Nods all around. Excited nods. "Good, because you're sitting in my private box, best view in the stadium, and after the game, you're coming down to the field. All of you. You're going to stand on the grass where I play. Deal?" The kids erupted, cheering, laughing, some crying happy tears. Their parents looked overwhelmed. That night, 20 injured children sat in Babe Ruth's private box, watching the Yankees play. Between innings, Ruth looked up at them, tipped his cap. They went wild every time. In the 7th inning, Ruth hit a double. As he stood on second base, he looked directly at that box, pointed at the kids, touched his heart. The crowd had no idea what they were witnessing, just thought the babe was being the babe. But those kids knew, and they never forgot. After the game, true to his word, Ruth brought all 20 kids onto the field. Let them touch the bases, stand in the batter's box, feel the grass under their feet. Some of them were crying again, not from pain, from joy. One kid, the 12-year-old with the broken jaw, now healing but still bandaged, managed to whisper to Ruth, "You kept your promise." "Always do, kid. Always do." The basket of signed baseballs stayed in Babe Ruth's locker for the rest of his career. When he changed teams, the basket came with him. When he retired, he kept it in his home. And when he died, in 1948, that basket was mentioned in his will. He left it to the Baseball Hall of Fame with specific instructions. "These are from the bravest people I ever met." The baseballs are still there, on display. A wicker basket full of scuffed balls covered in children's signatures. Next to them, a plaque that tells the story. The stampede, the hospital visit, the return gift. The mutual gratitude between a baseball legend and the kids who just wanted to see him play. Most people who visit the Hall of Fame walk right past that display. They're looking for Ruth's home run records, his stats, his famous photographs. They don't notice the basket. But sometimes someone stops, reads the plaque, looks at those old baseballs covered in fading signatures, and they understand something important. Babe Ruth hit 714 home runs, set records that lasted decades, changed baseball forever. But the thing he was most proud of, the thing that mattered most to him, was making kids happy. Not because it was good publicity, not because someone told him to, because he genuinely cared. Those 62 injured children could have blamed the babe, could have resented him, could have never gone to another game. Instead, they thanked him, not for hitting home runs, for showing up when they were hurting and making them feel like they mattered. And Babe Ruth, the man who had everything, who could buy anything, who received gifts from kings and presidents, said a basket of scuffed baseballs from injured kids was the best gift he ever received. Years later, one of those children, now an old man, was interviewed about that day. The reporter asked him what he remembered most about meeting Babe Ruth. The man thought for a long moment. Then he said, "He cried. This giant of a man, this legend, cried when we gave him those baseballs? That's when I learned something important. Real strength isn't about being tough. It's about being brave enough to care. The basket sits in the Hall of Fame. The story is mostly forgotten, but every once in a while someone discovers it, reads about what happened, and understands what made Babe Ruth more than just a baseball player. He was human, flawed, made mistakes, lived recklessly. But when it mattered, when kids needed someone to care, he showed up. No cameras, no credit, just showed up. And those kids never forgot. Not for the rest of their lives. That's the real story of Babe Ruth. Not the home runs, the heartbreak he could have prevented but chose to heal instead. The doctors at Lincoln Hospital kept records. In their notes from that week in 1929, small observations revealed something profound. Patient morale improved significantly. Child refused medication until baseball placed on nightstand. Recovery rate exceeds expectations. The nurses knew. Something had shifted after the babe walked through. One mother, whose daughter had stopped eating after the Stampede, wrote a letter to Ruth months later. She never sent it, but her family found it decades later. In it, she described watching Ruth kneel beside her daughter's bed, how he spoke to her like she was the most important person in the world. "You gave me my child back," the letter said. "Not the doctors, not the medicine. You, a man who owed us nothing. You gave me my child back." Ruth never saw that letter, but he would have understood it. His teammates noticed a change in him after that hospital visit. He was quieter, less boastful. When fans mobbed him for autographs, he stayed longer, signed every single one. One teammate recalled a conversation on a train at 3 in the morning. Ruth was staring out the window. "You thinking about something, babe?" Ruth didn't answer right away. Then, "You ever think about what we owe people? The fans? The kids who look up to us?" "I used to think I didn't owe anybody anything," Ruth continued. "I hit home runs. That's the job. But those kids at the hospital didn't care about home runs. They just wanted to know someone cared. That's the real job," the teammate asked. "You gonna keep doing it? The hospital visits?" Ruth smiled. "As long as I can swing a bat, I'll visit kids who can't." And he kept that promise. For the rest of his career, Ruth found local children's hospitals. Sometimes he slipped away alone. No cameras, no press, just baseballs and stories and time. The Lincoln Hospital visit became a template. The quiet arrival, the personal attention, the signed baseballs, the promises to hit home runs, and he kept every promise. In 1932, Ruth hit his famous called shot home run. Debates raged about whether he actually called it. But years later, a nurse from Lincoln Hospital was interviewed. "Remember it?" She laughed. "I'll never forget it. That man changed how I thought about celebrities. Most come for photos. Ruth came because he felt responsible." The reporter asked if she thought the called shot was real. The old nurse smiled. "You're asking the wrong question. Whether he pointed or didn't, that's not the story. The real story is Ruth promised hundreds of sick children he'd hit home runs for them. And he did it. Over and over. That's not a trick. That's a pattern of caring." She pulled out a photograph, faded, yellowed, a group of children on a baseball field, and in the center, Babe Ruth, kneeling, his arm around a little boy with a bandaged head. "This was taken the night those kids came back to thank him," the nurse said. "Look at his face." Ruth wasn't smiling for the camera. He was looking at the kids. His expression was pure joy, real joy. "That," the nurse said, "is who Babe Ruth really was. Not the legend, the man." The children from Lincoln Hospital grew up, had families. Many never met again, But they all kept their baseballs, passed them down, told the story. The babe came when we were hurting, made us feel like we mattered. When Ruth died in 1948, thousands attended his funeral, but scattered through the crowd were ordinary people holding baseballs. The children from Lincoln Hospital, from 100 other hospitals. They stood in the rain outside St. Patrick's Cathedral holding those baseballs, a silent tribute to a man who'd given them something more valuable than a signature: hope. One of them, the little boy who'd been 5 with the head bandage, now a grown man, spoke to a reporter. The man held up his baseball, the signature almost invisible now. "When I was dying," he said simply, "Babe Ruth made me want to live." The basket sits in Cooperstown. The photograph hangs nearby. The story gets told occasionally, but it's not the headline. The headlines are about statistics and the called shot. That's okay. Ruth would have preferred it that way. He didn't do it for headlines. He did it because children were hurt and he could help. But every once in a while, and someone visits the Hall of Fame with their grandparent. The grandparent stops at that display, tears up. The grandchild asks why, and the grandparent tells them the story, about the day they met Babe Ruth, about how he came, about how he made them feel important. "That's mine," they say, showing a photo of their baseball. "The babe gave me that, told me I was brave, told me I mattered, and I believed him." That's the legacy. Not 714 home runs, not the records. The legacy of showing up when you didn't have to, of caring when nobody was watching. The rain lasted 20 minutes. The injuries took weeks. But Ruth's response lasted generations. Will keep lasting as long as people remember that greatness isn't measured in achievements. It's measured in the moments you choose to care anyway. That's the real story, the one that changes lives.